Part 3 of The Birth of Professional Rugby League in Australia. Selections from the Sydney Morning Herald, 1907 to 1908. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Foundation of the New South Wales Rugby League, 7th of August to 13th of August 1907. Wednesday, 7th of August 1907. The All Golds. Progress of Professional Rugby. Union adversely criticised. Professionalism is the topic of conversation in rugby football circles at the present time, and within the next fortnight developments of a startling character will probably take place. As soon as the names of the team to meet the New Zealand professional team, or All Golds as they are called, on the 17th inst. And succeeding days are published, those players will be prevented from taking part in the concluding rounds of the grade competitions, and will no longer be allowed to play in union matches with amateurs. A war between the rugby unions and certain players and their supporters will open. How far it will go no one can predict, but the union will fight to the bitter end to uphold the principles of football by amateurs only, and in this respect they will receive the support of the general public. To test the question, the first move on the part of the Union will probably be to put the final of the two first grade matches on the Sydney Cricket Ground on the 24th inst., which is the second day of the professional match on the Agricultural Ground. The public will then have an opportunity of patronising either amateur or professional football. It is considered that such a test would give the Union some idea how far the public are with them in their determination to kill professional football in its initial stages. But the question arises, what has brought about all this trouble in the midst of a rugby boom? In nearly every case the fingers of those who answer point to the rugby union and what is termed its greed. Several first-grade players yesterday spoke bitterly of the desire on the part of the union officials to have a big bank balance, without taking into consideration the fact that the players provide the sport, and they should be encouraged. These players are connected with various clubs, and the spirit of rivalry for local distinction and supremacy has been the keynote of their energy and enthusiasm. There is friendly rivalry on all sides, but the Union, it is claimed, has killed that rivalry by dragging the leading clubs out of their own districts Saturday after Saturday in order to provide gate money. The Sydney Cricket Ground was obtained by the Rugby Union for 12.5% of the day's takings, while on such grounds as the University Oval they would have had to pay 33%. Throughout this season, the University Club has provided the sport Saturday after Saturday at the Sydney Cricket Ground to help swell the funds of the Union, while at the same time an inferior match was being played at the University Oval which did not draw an audience sufficient to do little more than pay working expenses. The University men, who are as true and loyal amateur sports as are to be found anywhere, naturally have a warm interest in the welfare of the University Oval, and seeing that they have been this season well up in the competition, they would naturally have preferred their ground should have received a share of the earnings brought about through them. Instead of this, they have provided football for the benefit of the Rugby Union and the trustees of the Sydney Cricket Ground, and at the same time compelled the thousands of supporters resident in the western suburbs to travel right across the metropolis to witness their own representatives playing. What applies to the University Club applies equally to all the electorates, in many of which are grounds. These have to be maintained, and it is the local footballers and cricketers who are looked to draw the public. Each club vies with the other, not only in combating for supremacy, but in helping along their local grounds. In the past they have been encouraged to do this by the Cricket Association. A general feeling prevails that, instead of spending £13,000 on the purchase of Lily Bridge grounds, the Rugby Union should have voted year by year a sum to different clubs to enable them to provide what was required for upkeep and maintenance, and equally distribute the leading games each Saturday over those grounds provided with proper seating accommodation, such as the Rushcutter Bay Oval, Wentworth Park, Erskineville Oval and North Sydney Oval, in addition to the Sydney Cricket and Sports Grounds. Had it done so, there would have been a spirit of contentment and no cry for professionalism. Last year the players had to pay their own expenses into the country, and until late this year, if a player was hurt, he had to do the best he could for himself. Now the clubs go into the country, have actual expenses paid, and by arrangement with an insurance company, players injured are assisted while they are incapacitated from work. It is claimed, however, that it was hard work to get even these concessions, as the sole aim of the Rugby Union has been to hoard up money. By transferring play to Lillie Bridge, the best clubs will leave their districts every Saturday. Local interest will be killed, and instead of electoral football, Sydney will have Lillie Bridge football. Some of the broad-minded players, who are also sound amateurs, demand that the Union should retrace its steps and save the situation. Possible action by the New South Wales Union. Inquiries made of the Secretary, Mr. W. W. Hill, last night, failed to elicit definite information regarding possible action by the New South Wales Rugby Union. Still, it is certain that some action is contemplated by members of the Union, having as its object the signing of a declaration by each individual member of the New South Wales team that he will not take part in any matches against the New Zealand professional team. The dates set down for the 3 matches on the agricultural ground are August 17, 21 and 24. Various sums have been mentioned as inducements to secure the promise of prominent players to figure in the field against the coming professionals, but in many cases the amount is considered not big enough. One player of promise remarked that £25 for 3 matches and certain disqualification was not good enough for him. An official of one first-grade club said his team would go over as a whole and play in the partial professional manner adopted by leading cricketers if the movement were placed on a firm basis. The Metropolitan Union. Remedy for disaffection. Mr. H. D. Wood, President of the Metropolitan Rugby Union, stated yesterday that if the clubs were not satisfied with the administration of affairs, they had the remedy in their own hands. Each club elected 3 delegates to the Union, one of whom also acted on the committee. The latter elected the various officers, including the Secretary and Treasurer, so that the administration of the funds rested with them. He thought that it would be found that after all a few disaffected spirits were responsible for the outcry. Mr. Wood said he was strongly opposed to the introduction of professionalism, not only on principle, but because it would also mean the breaking of the relations existing between the football authorities here and the amateur organisations in Great Britain and New Zealand. Thursday, 8th of August 1907. The All Golds. Progress of Professionalism. Interview with Sealing. Matters in connection with the possible secession from the amateur ranks were yesterday widely discussed. It is generally admitted that the feeling in favour of some alteration in the government of the game has taken deep root, though the direction which any movement will take is still a matter of conjecture. It is generally felt that it would be impossible for the one governing body to control the amateur and the professional, and both to meet in one team. All sorts of revelations are promised, one being that 4 clubs, and no fewer than 90 men, were prepared to secede from the amateur ranks. Asked as to the statement that he was one of the selectors of the New Zealand professional team, Mr. C. Sealing, one of the Auckland representatives, said it was not a fact, and he had cabled to New Zealand to that effect. I was approached in the matter, and that is all. It is a gross libel, he added. There is not likely to be any trouble in connection with Saturday's match, because of some of the present team joining the professionals. You can take my word for it that the list cabled from New Zealand is almost entirely wrong. It has been cabled that 6 of the present team have been selected to go with the professional team. It is not so. There may perhaps be 1, but no more. The whole of the team have booked their passages home again. Francis, Cunningham, Gillett, Hughes and probably Nicholson will leave for Auckland direct on Wednesday. The rest of the team will leave immediately after the match on Saturday. I do not think professional football would succeed in New Zealand. It might in Sydney. In New Zealand the attendances at club matches are very small. 500 or 600 is a good crowd at a club match in Auckland. Mr. Sealing remarked that it was not his intention to follow up the game. He was retiring for good. He did not intend to take any more rinks. The team had all suffered in health since their arrival in Sydney, and at Brisbane every member, without exception, had dengue fever or influenza. Gillett, though not well, could play wing forward on Saturday, but MacDonald, who received a severe injury to his back, would stand down. Several members of the team, he said, himself included, had not shown their true form during the trip. Union optimistic. A meeting of the Council of the New South Wales Rugby Union was held last night, and at its close, the Secretary, Mr. W. W. Hill, intimated that the Council was satisfied that there was no suspicion of professionalism attaching to members of the New South Wales team, nor the New South Wales members of the Australian team. Views of supporters. JGD writes expressing his belief that the entrance of the professional system means the decay of rugby. Outside a certain interested section, he adds, the vast majority of people are strongly opposed to our present winter pastime being degraded into a money-grabbing business for the benefit of a few alleged sportsmen, who care little about the interests of rugby, but a great deal about the welfare of themselves. However, from their mercenary action, good will spring, the rapid advancement of the Australian game of football. Friday, 9th of August, 1907. Professional team. Reported recantation. Wellington, Thursday. It is reported locally that matters in connection with the formation of the professional football team for England have taken an unexpected turn. Information has been received that all the Auckland members of the team now in Australia, who it was reported had signified their intention of joining the professional team, have now declared their intention of returning to New Zealand and remaining amateurs. The executive of the professional team profess themselves unperturbed. It is stated that the vacancies will be filled by the selection of equally good men. At least one of the team now in Australia is understood to be still determined to join the professionals. Gundagai, Thursday. Much interest is being taken in district football circles over the proposed professional rugby in Sydney. The unanimous feeling here is against the proposal, and a motion supporting the head of the union fighting the professional movement is to be moved at the next meeting of the South Western Rugby Union. Saturday, 10th of August 1907. Professional Rugby. 8 clubs represented. New South Wales Football League. A meeting of players and others interested in the professional movement was held at Bateman's Crystal Hotel on Thursday evening. The chair was occupied by Mr. Hoyle. There were about 50 present, including a number of first-grade players, no fewer than 5 captains being amongst those in attendance. 8 senior clubs were represented, the remaining 3 being University, Manly and Western Suburbs. The Manly Club is away on a tour of the rivers. Before business was entered upon, all present had to sign a document agreeing to play against the New Zealand professional team shortly to visit Sydney. The matches are set down for August 17th, 21st and 24th on the agricultural ground. It was resolved to form a body called the New South Wales Football League. Matters in connection with the project were discussed at length, the general tone being that members were not to go in for out-and-out professionalism, but simply to make good out-of-pocket expenses. A selection committee was appointed consisting of 3 who were captains of first-grade clubs. It is stated on good authority that some leading players and supporters have received intimation from their employers that they must either forego their positions or professionalism. The question of grounds occupied some attention. There are 3 grounds mentioned as available for the new league next season, viz. Wentworth Park, Agricultural Ground, and Hampden Oval. The organisers of the movement are Mr. J. Giltinan and a prominent cricketer. New Zealand Professional Team, Wellington, Friday. 15 members of the professional football team left for Sydney by the Warrimoo this evening. They were Pearce, Turtle, Lavery and McGregor, Canterbury; Wrigley, Masterton; A. H. Baskerville, R. Callum, E. Lyle, A. Gilchrist and E. Watkins, Wellington; Cress, Byrne, Wright, Tyne and Kelly, Petone. The final selection will be made in Sydney. It is suggested that more than one amateur of the All Blacks may yet join the professionals. Monday, 12th of August, 1907. The Professional Movement. The professional rugby teams were widely discussed on Saturday in town and out at the Sydney Cricket Ground. It was thought that there might be a number of alterations in the Australian team, but happily those anticipations did not prove correct. The players who attended the meeting on Thursday night at Bateman's Crystal Hotel were asked to sign the following agreement before the meeting opened. I hereby agree, if selected by the controllers, to play rugby football against the New Zealand professional team at Sydney in any or all of the 3 matches on August 17th, 21st and 24th next respectively. It is expected that all information will be shortly available as to the teams, and the New South Wales Rugby Union will then take action. Rugbyite writes: There have been several interesting letters appearing in your columns of late, pointing out the alleged awfulness of the advent of professionalism in rugby. The writers and the public should not lose sight of the fact that the unions are to a great extent guilty, inasmuch as they scoop in all the spoil, and certainly do not believe in that judicious policy of give and take. In the event of a player being injured, and in nearly every match there are injuries, in some cases of a serious nature, the unions, to quote the words of many of the players, are most niggardly in the matter of medical expenses and any other incidentals, only paying the bare costs, and in some instances not that. Players are beginning to arrive at the conclusion that there is little or nothing to be gained by their risking life and limb for the sport-loving fraternity, and to gratify the monetary gluttony of the rugby unions. The unions are wholly to blame for the present state of affairs. If they do not meet players in the matter of expenses more liberally, professional rugby is sure to come. The public must also not lose sight of the fact that rugby is not the only game of football. We have the Australian game making strides in our midst, and which game is played almost universally in the other states, and if the conscience of the sport-loving public will not allow them to watch professional rugby, then they can cheer themselves hoarse by supporting and watching the truly national game. Clean Sport writes: In your issue of Tuesday 8th instant, Mr. Hungerford says he will fight professionalism with tooth and nail, at the same time knowing a leading member of one leading team to have received a certain sum to visit Queensland to play in the second Test match. Mr. Alex Knox writes: As a non-partisan, I have read with great interest the discussion appearing in your columns regarding the new phase of rugby football, and must express my concurrence in the proposed change, it appearing to me that the players have not hitherto received from the Metropolitan Rugby Union the consideration to which they are entitled. I am further of the opinion that the new idea will in no way lower the standard of play, but must tend to elevate it. I would suggest that the new league enlist the support of honorary members from the outside public. Tuesday, 13th of August, 1907. Professional football. Players selected. Reprisals against employers. A 1908 English tour. A meeting of the newly formed Professional New South Wales Rugby League was held at Bateman's Hotel last evening. Mr. H. Hoyle, President, occupied the chair, and among those present were Mr. J. J. Giltinan, Secretary, Mr. Victor Trumper, and about 30 players, including Messenger, Eastern Suburbs; Graves, captain, Balmain; Hennessy, South Sydney; Hamill, captain, Newtown; Abercrombie, vice-captain, North Sydney; Burden, captain, Sydney; T. Costello, ex-Australian captain; Henlon, ex-interstate player; Hutchinson, late Balmain; T. O'Donnell, Balmain; Brackenrig, Eastern Suburbs; Rosenfeld, North Sydney; Lutcher, North Sydney; Cheadle, Newtown; P. J. McNamara, late Eastern Suburbs; Glanville, North Sydney; P. Mayor, Glebe. All the clubs were represented, with the exception of Western Suburbs and University. Mr. J. J. Giltinan, in course of an explanation of the aims of the League, said that they would not be professionals in the strict sense of the term. It was intended to pay the men their travelling expenses and for loss of time from work. To be a good sport, one's hand had to be frequently in one's pocket, and this was also to be provided for. They intended to help old footballers by putting them on the gates and making them line umpires, paying them for their services in either case. If they became strong enough, they hoped to establish pensions. Then they could use their influence as well as the other unions to secure billets for players. But they would not, when a man changed his mind and went over to the other side, use that influence to get that man thrown out of his billet. (Cheers.) He mentioned the name of one man who would have played in Saturday's match if he had backed down, and now it was said that if he played against the professional All Blacks he would lose his job. "If he does," continued the speaker, "well, he can come to me, and I'll give him a billet myself. (Cheers.) Regarding the Epping ground, he would like to say that if the Metropolitan Rugby Union offered sufficient inducement, the League would probably rent it from them next year. They would not have enough grounds to play on. (Laughter.) They intended to fully insure all their players, and he would say, by the way, that the M.R.U. would not have made any move in that direction had they not got a hint as to what the League intended to do. (Hear, hear.) But the League would not give the injured man 1 guinea a week, but just double that. He urged the men to stick to their guns, and hoped to be able to hand over a bumper cheque to the new clubs after the forthcoming matches. Mr. Trumper, who was acting with him in this matter, was one of their straightest men. They did not look to make anything out of the venture. They spent their money as sports, and if they lost, that was their lookout. However, they wanted the men to back them up, and he was sure that when the time came they would not object to the promoters taking out the little dividend they had put into the venture. He had written to England trying to arrange for a team to leave Australia in 1908, so that they could also hold out the inducement of a trip to the Old World, though not on a 3 shillings a day basis. (Cheers.) The men would get a certain percentage of the gate, and if they came back with £200 in their pockets, well and good. (Cheers.) They were going to select 19 men for Saturday's match, but they would not publish the names of the other players who had signed on yet, so that they might be able to play for their clubs on Saturday. Mr. Giltinan announced that he had engaged the Town Hall for Thursday night for a public reception of the All Blacks. The chairman said that in view of the threats by employers to dismiss men who played for the League, they wanted it to be understood that any man so dismissed would be supplied with funds to take up a case at law against the employer. But in the case of threatened dismissals, if the player would lay the matter before the executive, they would interview the employer and put their side of the case before him. Mr. F. Henlon, ex-international player, in sympathising with the League, said that he felt sure that in the old days men were paid to play the game, and that there was no talk about it, and why not? Mr. George Boyce, who recently retired from the M.R.U. Referees Association, explained the steps taken to form a referees' union in connection with the League. 90% of the M.R.U. Association would join the new body in consequence of the disqualification that existed. It was intended to place all active referees on the list for selection for representative matches. Referees would be allowed their uniform, travelling expenses and out-of-pocket expenses, the same as the players. At a committee meeting subsequently held, the following 20 players were selected to go into training for the matches against the New Zealand professional team. Backs: C. Headley, Glebe; J. Stunts, Eastern Suburbs; H. Messenger, Eastern Suburbs; E. Fry, South Sydney; F. Cheadle, Newtown; A. Rosenfeld, Eastern Suburbs; L. Dalpouget, Eastern Suburbs; W. Farnsworth, Newtown; and J. Hickey, Glebe. Forwards: R. Mabel, Eastern Suburbs; A. S. Hennessy, South Sydney; H. Hamill, Newtown; S. Pearce, Eastern Suburbs; P. Moyer, Glebe; W. Cann, South Sydney; R. H. Graves, Balmain; H. Brackenrig, Eastern Suburbs; H. Glanville, North Sydney; A. Dobbs, Balmain; E. Courtney, St. George. The selectors were R. Burden, Sydney; A. Hennessy, South Sydney; and R. Graves, Balmain, assisted by H. Messenger, Eastern Suburbs. The team will be coached by R. Burden. The training quarters are the Agricultural Ground, and operations will begin this evening and will be continued on Wednesday and Friday. It was stated last night that one of the above players would receive £50 for playing in 3 matches. To the Editor of the Herald. Sir, it seems to have been taken for granted by certain people that because a number of players here are willing to meet and play the New Zealand professional team for England, the sport is threatened with dire consequences. One would be led to believe by what has appeared in the press that professional rugby was first heard of when a team was formed in New Zealand. The fact that the game flourishes in England under professionalism, and that this all-black combination will meet the most famous players in the old country, is completely ignored. England is the home of rugby, and there is a larger section of the public support the game under the system by which the players draw expenses than the section which supports the pure amateur element. It has been stated that all sport goes down when the players are paid any form of remuneration for their services. Well, rugby in England directly disproves this, as also does first-class cricket there and in Australia. If paying the players ruined the game, where would our chance of playing England at cricket be? Every player worth picking has had his share of the gate abroad, and a fat fee for expenses at home. Supposing the worst comes to the worst, and a new union is formed, which will pay proper expenses to the men and treat a player liberally when he is required, is it not likely that the game will be strengthened here? The hide-bound Metropolitan Rugby Union has always neglected the good rule that the strength of the clubs should be the basis of the whole management. If a new union is prepared to give the clubs under its wing better treatment, then the present union must follow suit. The consequence would be that rugby would soon be on an improved wicket all round. Still keener interest would be aroused, and the game would be more liberally patronised. It is well known that the players who are willing to join the new movement do not ask, nor will they receive, more than fair expenses and proper attention when hurt. Yet attempts are being made to brand them as renegades to the good old game, and sports who are only out for what they can make. Surely the public, to whom so many appeals are being made on behalf of the unions, must see that these men have a perfect right to resent the shabby treatment they have received. It would be a fine thing, no doubt, if every player could afford to neglect his work and travel on 3 shillings and 4pence per day. But who is to keep the pot boiling while the worker is away playing the noble game and drawing thousands of pounds to a central exchequer? It is an open secret that while the All Blacks were making Great Britain ring with their exploits, some of the families dependent on players were almost starving in New Zealand. How much semi-professionalism there has been in rugby in New South Wales, it is of course impossible to say, but what there has been distinctly unfair. It is only when a man who is wanted badly refuses to go on that arrangements are made to meet him. The most common form of semi-professionalism is finding billets for special players, and it is a significant fact that, according to the papers, certain players have been threatened with the loss of their billets in the event of their playing against the professional All Blacks. What employer who really requires the services of a man will dismiss him for changing the conditions under which he plays football? I am confident that the public will take a fair view of the case for the players, and that they will attend to see a good game, with an all black combination that is setting out to take on the best team in England. I am, etc. James J. Giltinan, ONSEC, New South Wales Rugby Football League. End of Part 3.